Cobra Triangle. Speed and skill are all that can save you. And welcome to Nostalgia, a chronological exploration of every NES game released in North America. I'm Mike.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Joe.
Guys, be honest with me. When you saw that we were playing a game called Cobra Triangle, you must have thought, at least somewhat, that it was going to be a playoff on the Bermuda Triangle.
Well, all right, that's actually not what I was thinking. I still don't know what Cobra Triangle is really referencing here. I figured with Cobra in the name, I thought it was going to be like some kind of military thing because, you know, snakes show up as in titles in those kinds of games sometime. But I have no idea what this means.
My original thought was similar, like maybe just because like Cobra Command type thing or something. But once I saw there was water, I did think Bermuda Triangle.
Once I saw that there was water.
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with the Cobra Triangle. Whenever I see water, I think about the Bermuda Triangle.
Now I think that the triangle part is just because, like, you know, boats are slightly triangular.
Yeah, and the Cobra part is because there's a cobra in the wake. When you look back behind a speedboat, it looks like a cobra head.
Oh, that's fun.
Is it not that, are Cobra like a type of boats? Like, is that a possibility?
I suppose.
No.
I don't know
that's
enough
what I
about
said.
boats.
I don't know enough about boats. I'm not rich enough to own one.
I don't know.
Joe's pretty confident
idea.
about that,
I have
though.
no idea.
Oh.
Yeah, it's something about that. Just, you know, maybe I just thought, like, even if maybe your boat is the Cobra in this game, like, for all we know, it's just nicknamed the Cobra, and the triangle part is like just a it's a shape, just a fun shape reference.
What's your favorite shape?
It's just a reference to shapes, a
hexagon.
sick reference. Yeah.
Why does it feel like we're done with the episode?
No, we're not done with the episode.
Feels like this is the post-show.
I think what I was really wanted this to be about was just about the Bermuda Triangle, because that is something that, like, as a kid, you're told to be, like, actively afraid of. Like, we need to solve whatever's going down at the Bermuda Triangle. But then, like, when you become an adult, you just don't think about that anymore.
I mean, it's the same with whirlpools, and that's in this game, too. Like, I was deathly afraid of whirlpools.
Whirlpools and quicksand.
Yeah, exactly.
They're
That's true.
everywhere, but also nowhere.
But, like, I mean, has anyone seen a whirlpool before?
Has anyone seen a whirlpool and quicksand in the same room at the same time?
All right, I'm going to move into the game.
Please do. Save us.
Joe's right. We are bordering, like, a nonsensical conversation.
No. It's
Cobra
totally
Triangle is a... I'm pulling this right from Wikipedia. I didn't come up with this. It's a racing vehicular combat video game. I think that sounds awesome. I think it's also a couple of other genres, too, while we're at it, but we'll get into that when we talk about the game. Anyway, in Cobra Triangle, the player races a cannon-equipped speedboat against other watercrafts. The 25 stages of graduated difficulty vary in objectives from winning races, saving swimmers, and defusing bombs, and so much more. Guys, I feel like I described many games, but also the idea that all of these games happen while you, drive a boat. Does that start the conversation at least enough for you guys? Should we just talk about the boat to begin with?
I think so, because it's unexpected, you know? Like a speedboat. We haven't really had much with like a speedboat type game, you know? Like this type of thing, I would usually feel like would be a helicopter or a spaceship or a car or something. But it's an interesting choice to make a speedboat, and I think the way it controls sort of feels like a speedboat. So I think they had a nice match there.
Yeah, so basically the game is RC Pro-Am, but on water. And yeah, the fact that they used the boat, I definitely have not played too many games in general, not even just in the realm of the NES, that your main form of movement is boat based. So it definitely gets points for how unique the concept is. But it's not just a boat. Like the Wikipedia says, it's an armed boat. It has missiles and pew-pews. but also between levels, like it just turns into a helicopter, which I think could have been explored in gameplay a bit. Instead of just a way to get from pool to pool or whatever is happening here. So I don't know, that's how I see it.
I thought it was really funny that the helicopter element of it really does look like, even in the world of the game, like that was designed as like just utility to move the boat around. It's like
Yeah.
instead of hitching it to your trailer, just use the little helicopter to get it into the water.
Or just like cutting to black and like assuming that, okay, now you're in a different place. It's like, well, we have to explain how the boat gets to this other body of water.
Right. No, everyone would be so confused if you don't see it go there.
Yeah.
Right, never mind that the helicopter would eliminate most of the challenge in this game if you could just use it during sections like jumping over waterfalls and avoiding, armed artillery.
Right.
But, Joe, I want you to talk a little bit about how this particular boat, this, we're going to call it the Cobra, controls, because, as you mentioned, this is our first time we're dealing with a boat being the main character, and obviously, the water itself plays a large role in how you control this boat. So, if you wouldn't mind, just talk a little bit about how it feels to be the Cobra.
Yeah, well, right off the bat, I think that this is, this is one of those games that makes me think, like, why can't more games get the feel of the way you control whatever, your vehicle, your person, or whatever, as good as this game did? Like, this feels smooth. It's 1-to-1. It never lags. It doesn't feel like you're trudging ever, if that makes any sense. So I think, like, right off the bat, I want to give my kudos to this game, because I think this feels, it's one of the few games that we've had that feels beyond the NES. It feels like you get air off of ramps, you skip off of waves, you really have a lot of fluid motion in this, and I think it works really nicely. The other thing that you'll probably notice right away when controlling this is it has that control scheme where your perspective as the player doesn't change, but so like when you're turning right, you have to think about the fact that you're turning to the driver's right.
Yeah, tank controls.
If you're moving back towards the camera, you have to kind of reverse everything in your head. So like that takes some getting used to, at least for me. It always does in games like that, but it's not, in my opinion, it's not necessarily like a huge flaw. I think it's just something that like I'm not used to, and it takes some time to get used to.
Yeah, I think that the tank controls and the isometric view really work well together. I mean, this, again, I mentioned RC Pro-Am because this is, I think, built on like the same code, I imagine. I thought that felt really fluid as well when we talked about that game. And now all it's doing is sort of like messing with momentum a bit. And I just think that like that whole perspective and control scheme, like just what Joe was saying, it kind of makes it feel a bit more timeless, because it's not like we're not worried about like, oh, this jump feels kind of stiff or anything. It's just like 1-to-1.
Right, and I think, some people who, like, pick up this game and start playing it might be inclined to say that, like, no, it's very difficult to control this boat, and also, like, because it is a tank, like, be a shmup at the same time, like, it's very hard to do both of those things in this space. But I think something about the way that the momentum of moving the boat and the aliveness of the water, like, even though it's not perfectly demonstrated to you with the pixel art, I do feel like they're giving a good amount of momentum to the waves themselves and to how it would be in a speed boat when you're charging all that you just kind of get that timing down with practice. It's not that it's hard to control the Cobra. Yes, at times, like, you may have given yourselves too many speed upgrades, and therefore, you're kind of punished for going too fast. But I feel like overall, just the control of the Cobra and the way that they built the physics, let's call it, of how it moves in all of the water stages is, one, it's consistent, which is nice. But also, two, it's something where you're rewarded for playing it more often and kind of like getting that timing down. I'm thinking specifically about when you first get to like the obstacle course stages where there's like log flumes and stuff like that coming at you. That can be a very hard thing if you're just charging your way through those stages, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, there's a difference between a game being difficult and a game just having poor controls making it difficult, and this is sort of that. This is an example of that, where it's almost for me it was almost second nature controlling this vehicle, but that does not mean that this game was easy in any way because of the way that the levels are designed. And sometimes I feel like they're designed kind of unfairly, but you're right, Mike. Like if you do keep playing it, you will pick up on it. And it is those obstacle course levels, if we want to call it that, that were the biggest frustration inducer for me.
Yeah, I think as far as controlling the boat, I think it's difficult in the manner that they intended it to be difficult. You know, it's not difficult because of poor controls. It's difficult because they wanted it to be difficult, you know?
Yeah, like you almost need a certain... It would just be too... it wouldn't be interesting enough if the game just was like, yeah, that's the boat and it just moves at, a same fluid speed that makes it easy to navigate around. Like, I understand that it does kind of need some kind of maneuverability challenge to make it interesting to be the boat. You know, you're not just on land in a car going in a straight line. You're in a body of water. And that's why the turning is really interesting with the boat here, because I feel like even just the pixel art for the turns sells it enough that I feel like it's all happening not only very fluid, but in a way that like is easy for my brain to digest, like, you know, how I can avoid obstacles and how I can line myself up with the ramps and the power-ups and such.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine playing this game if like the controls were actually based on your perspective instead of the boat's perspective? I think it would just feel it either wouldn't feel boat-like, or it would just be completely disorienting, I think.
Yeah, I think because there's so much like turning and flipping around, and you know, suddenly you're going one way and then you're turning the other way. I can't even picture how the game would do that, you know? Like, what if you're kind of halfway between one, you know, there's only 4 directions on the D-pad.
Yeah.
So like it feels weird to even imagine it that way.
And then the second part to, you know, all of the reasons to make the boat different, right, to be its own character and stuff like that, are these power-ups, which are handled pretty interesting in this game, where there are these pods that are in certain levels that you collect them, and each one that you collect either has like a number 1 or a number 2 over it, and at the bottom of your screen there are different lists of power-ups, and it's all handled very similar to how Gradius handled its power-ups, where if you collect a pod, you can select that power-up, or you can keep collecting pods to get a potentially better power-up. But you can only, once you spend your power-up, you spend your power-up points, and you go back to the beginning and are forced to, like, recollect. I know it sounds like a lot, but really, if you just think about how Gradius and Life Force handled it, it's kind of funny to see that show up in what is described as a boat racing game. But I think it works here, in like the same reason why it worked in Gradius. You're given the challenge in your choice of like what you think you need for the particular stage, and also for upcoming stages, right? Like, I think the first time I played through this game, I just wanted to be faster, and then I realized when I got to like the boss fights, I was like, no, I need to be stronger. Actually,
yeah.
Like, I'll never take these things down. So you have to decide that stuff. What did you guys think about the not just the power-ups in general, but specifically that that mirroring of the Gradius element to it?
I agree that like the first playthrough that I did with this game, like I was kind of not paying attention to the action bits of it. That I was just sort of treating it as a more of a, I'm running an obstacle course and I just need to get to the end, and less like I need to deal damage like with like any of the bosses. And I still think that like when the levels that focus more on maneuvering and and speed. Like I like those better, but I was able to appreciate the more action focused bits once I did start paying attention to my power ups and actually focusing on getting like a wider spray or like missiles or things like that. It was a bit more fun when it's always more fun when you're powerful. So it was an aspect of the game that I guess I didn't realize I was missing until I played it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I actually was kind of the same way. I got to like the second boss without really doing much upgrading of like my missiles and everything, and could not. I was like locked. I was like, okay, there's no way I'll ever get past this, and unless I play for a really long time. And then when I started over and played that way, it makes a huge difference, and it really feels like you're customizing your character. It feels like RPG like, but it's not. Yeah, it's not. I like the fact that it's not as simple as like, okay, where do I want to spend my points? That you have to do like a skill-based thing to get yourself, like just to select what you want to upgrade. Then you upgrade it, then you got to do that again. It like kind of adds to the, to like how important those things feel and how like your appreciation of them after spending your time and skill and effort to get them.
Yeah, between what's going on for the particular stage that you're in, because remember, the objective keeps changing. So between that, the collecting of the power-ups and deciding your power-ups, and then also the short burst nature of each individual level, there really is a frantic nature to the game, right? There's a lot going on when you're actually playing it, and then they give you kind of these moments where it's like, okay, stage is over, here's 4 seconds to like get it together, and then we're going into the next new objective, learn and adapt quickly. I think that the power-ups, make the whole game a lot more interesting. If you even tried to play without them, I think you just get something that is either too hard or also just like takes away the fun of it, right? Like I think having a boat that shoots like missiles and shoots in like 8 different directions and has a force field, like there's something cool and interesting about that. That's what gives some personality to this Rare game. But I think the way that you get the power-ups, and I'm not suggesting that it needed to be like a based on score or something like that, but the pods are only available in certain levels, and they're given out kind of sparingly, other than a particular level that is just called collect the pods, which reoccurs. It's not like it's just once.
I think that's like a bonus level, yeah. Yeah,
it seems like a bonus level, but it's also like that's your only moment. And I feel like at that rate, like it should almost, because of, how like when you create a character in a game, and I think we had this with Nobunaga's Ambition, where you are creating your character based on certain attributes, and then you get to a particular set of skills, and all of a sudden it's just like RNG decides what that is. And it's like, well, I don't like those results, so now I got to reset my whole character and make another one. I feel like the way that the power-ups are given out in this game, it could be an early thing where it's like, well, I didn't collect enough of those pods, and I don't like my loadout, so I'm better off resetting than continuing. And I'm not saying like that they needed to make them easier to collect or anything, but they should have been something that could be acquired, throughout each of the stages. Now, I will mention the way that they handle power-ups in this is a lot better than how Gradius does. If you die, you do keep all your power-ups, which I think is a huge plus. Maybe that was like their trade-off. Like you won't be able to collect a lot of these, but we're also not going to punish you for dying once. Like, we're not going to strip you of every single power-up that you have. So, I guess I'm saying, like, maybe I'm talking myself out of it, but also, like, it was weird to see that, like, even in the first stage, you can go that entire thing without collecting a power-up, and then all of a sudden you're given a bunch, and then there's 2 more stages where no power-ups can possibly be collected. It just doesn't feel like they're putting as much emphasis on the power-ups as, say, you need in this particular game.
Yeah, I mean, I guess like one way that they could have done it was it's like score based, and that has like the added benefit of actually giving a reason to worry about score. But unless they wanted to just do like more pickups, or just like that there are not always these pods that are trailing they're trailing like the enemy boats, or that they just sort of like littered across the map. I don't know how they could have done it to sort of balance it out, but I do agree that it does feel kind of streaky where you can find them.
I don't hate that they're so scarce, or like that they're only in those first, because they're in the first 2 levels. At the first level, you can get 1 or 2 of them, and then the second level, if I'm remembering correctly, the collect the pods, I think, is the second level. Whenever the collect the pods is, you can get a bunch of them, and I don't hate it as long as the player is aware that those are the 2 levels. You know, like I feel like the first time you play it, it's kind of frustrating because you're like, okay, well, I didn't know that I was gonna have to go 6 more levels before I was gonna be able to upgrade anything again. That's annoying. But I feel like as long as, like, on your second playthrough, like with anything that involves a strategy, with any game, I think that like it's important for as far as like fairness to the player that they know the rules. You know what I mean? They know, like, not that it's a rule, but like it feels like if you know that going in, I feel like it's kind of a cool mechanic where you're like, okay, the first level I'll collect 1 or 2, get what I want. And the second level, okay, this is my time to like build myself as much as I can and like kind of like save up for the winter, because in the next 5 levels I'm going to need these power-ups. So like, all right, this is what I'm going to do this level, is collect as many of these things as I can, get my power-ups, and now I got to use this to get me through to the next one, which will be a little while. And I don't think that's such a bad thing. I just think that that like being blindsided by it doesn't give you the opportunity to like use it as a gameplay mechanic.
But you don't think that to the other point I was making earlier, that like, so now that you know that it's available in the first 2 stages, if you don't perform well in those first 2 stages, you're just gonna reset, right, to make sure that you collect all the pods in the second stage, so that you have a more well-equipped boat going into the
I guess I see
stages.
that, and I don't see the like, you know, it's hard to see the incentive to not do that because it's so early in the game. But you know, it is also just like depends on how, you know, how you want to play the game. I mean, if you, I don't know, it feels like that doing that kind of, you're robbing yourself a little bit of playing the game as the way it was intended to be played. But I get it. Like, it's so early in the game. I mean, it's just like when, you know, if I'm trying to beat a boss and I suddenly, in like some other game, and I suddenly like get my ass handed to me in the first 10 seconds, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna start. So I'm gonna hit reset and start over. Like, I get that. But yeah, I don't know. I think it just comes down to like if you want to like, if the player wants to like let themselves play it that way.
Yeah, I hear you. And I don't think it has to be something where, or it definitely shouldn't be something where, okay, you completed this stage, here's your power-up reward. Like, that stinks. That's not fun, and that's not even like, that's not necessarily like, it's not that kind of game where you should be rewarded with becoming stronger because you completed a level. It should be something tied to skill, because ultimately that's what this whole game is, right? It's a test of skill.
Well, I mean, in some instances, like you're not completing the level unless you have some modicum of skill. I mean, especially the ones with like waterfalls and whirlpools. Like that's skillful to be able to finish I guess, without using a continue.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, so you're saying like if you complete that level, that it might be worth giving out like a power up for that.
I mean, it doesn't seem counterintuitive. I think that it's
I'm not. I really, honestly, I could go one way or the other with this. I guess what I'm thinking is like, because it's a game of like, you know, you're being tested by the objectives continuing to change and by how much, you know, how little damage you can take and stuff like that. That the power ups being tied to a additional bonus that you can collect is arguably like more it's more cohesive to what the game is setting up for you than handing you these power-ups, right? Like if they do it that way, it's almost like the test is being levied by the game, not by the player's skill.
Yeah,
I suppose.
I know what you're saying too, because I feel like, I mean, I'm not saying one way is better than the other, but I just feel like the way this game is what it's trying to do is make it feel like you're in control of how powerful you end up being. And like, if you were to go the other route where like beating a level gives you a power up, then like always on the third level, you'd always have 3 power-ups, you know? Like, you'd always be at this level of power at this stage, and as you go on, it would kind of be like,
well, I guess that also
somewhat
depends
linear
on
in that sense.
I'd say like if it were some sort of like hybrid of the two, like you could have only done enough to get the one guaranteed for completing X level. Like, you can still get more and be more powerful because you are skillful, but it would also alleviate the effect of, well, I don't have any power-ups, and now I'm in the middle of these couple levels where they just don't hand them out at all. It would sort of make it so that you're not immediately restarting just because of the power-up situation that you're in at this specific point, where you're already in a suboptimal state. I don't know. It's not entirely important, but if we want to debate the philosophy of power-up acquirement, I guess it's in there.
Yeah, no, I hear it. And I think that what you're saying works. I just think that changes the game so much. Like, not so much, but it changes the game as to like what. Like, here's like an analogy that I always like to have a Kingdom Hearts analogy every few episodes. So in Kingdom Hearts 1, when you beat a boss, you get the appropriate amount of experience points, and from those experience points, you get whatever levels you would get. Sometimes you'll because it was a boss, it's a ton of experience. You get 3 or 4 levels, and or sometimes if you're further ahead, you get fewer levels or whatever, just depending on where you are. In Kingdom Hearts 2, they changed that, where when you beat a boss, you don't get experience, you get automatic like level up style, like level up worthy bonuses. So it's like always in that game, when you beat this boss, you'll get this much health, and always which is fine, and I feel like it probably makes it easier for them to design the game in a fun way. But for me as the player, it does make me feel like I've lost a little bit of the freedom. I feel like no matter what, when I'm at this stage in the game, this is how much health I'll have. Whereas in Kingdom Hearts 1, it was always cool for me to like see like see the results of my grinding were. Like, oh my god, look how much health I have so early in the game. You know, so it's like, yeah, I can see it both ways, but yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
I also just think, and we should move on to the other objectives here because this is going to lead well into it, is that ultimately the game is just giving you like a test of your skill, right? It's saying, okay, you completed the racing thing. Now you have to save a bunch of kids. And okay, you saved all the kids. Now you've got to survive the obstacle course. Okay, you saved the obstacle course. Now you got to fight the Loch Ness Monster, or whatever we want to call it. It's continuing to test your skills in different ways. And so I feel like it is best to leave all choices of how to go about doing that, right, to the player. So for the whether it's the power-ups or even just how you go about saving the kids, it's about your strategy for it. So for some people, they would want, for the save the kids thing, you don't want the other boats picking up the kids. You want to have like a bunch of different firing directions, so this way you can fire from boats at all angles. But other people might say like, no, once a boat grabs your kid, if you're not fast enough to shoot down that boat, you're not going to be able to chase it down, and then you're going to guarantee that you lose that kid. So you want some speed. I like that there's some freedom in how you choose these things. I
mean, my strategy with the kids was just to let all the other ones get taken and just protect one kid. It's much easier to protect one kid.
That's a guy who doesn't give a shit about high scores. and shouldn't. We have all said high scores don't matter. So I'm right there with you. You're playing.
And it's how I do it in real life.
Right there. Yeah, exactly. Can we talk about the objectives, though? Because I feel like it's a funny thing when you're playing this game for the very first time. Maybe it spells it out more in the manual in the back of the box. But if you just start this game up, like the Loch Ness Monster thing on the front cover of the game is like a little strange. And you're like, oh, maybe I'll go up against that thing or like see it in the game. But the objective says race to the finish, and there's all these other boats, and we are coming from the same developers who made RC Pro-Am. So I don't know about you guys, but I just assumed that this was about to be like a GP style thing where I'm like racing other boats and I can shoot them down if I want to, but ultimately like I have to get first place in this race.
Yeah.
And what they really meant was race against time.
Yeah, I definitely thought that this was going to be, well, okay, but when I opened up the manual, I thought it was going to be a game where every level was a race, and there was just going to be these weird obstacles in the way, but it was always going to be a race format. And then once I got to like that page that kind of outlined all of the different kinds of objectives, I'm like, oh, okay, this is, I guess, a bunch of mini games, and racing is one of them. And then it turns out that racing really isn't any of them, unless you consider like time trials with bots that aren't actually racing you a race. But no, it was very surprising how much variety the game has. But also, I did feel a little misled, especially because it starts. The first level is the race, so you could go through the first level of the game and not even understand what the rest of the game was going to be about.
Yeah, it definitely was misleading for me as well, but maybe not as much so because I knew less. I didn't read the manual first, so I was just like booted it up and was like, oh, okay, a race, and I was like, oh, okay, it's not a race. But but in that first level, I did at first like still think I was racing the whole first level. I was like, gotta get in front of that guy. He looks like he's the one in the lead. And then I get in front of him and I'm like, oh, there's 3 more people up there that I keep going because people just keep spawning ahead of you because it doesn't matter. But yeah, I was also pleasantly surprised, I'll say, when like most of the other games came up and I was like, wow, I was not expecting this. I was not expecting to have to save a bunch of swimmers.
Yeah, and there's like children. A fun, yeah, it does say save the children, right?
I thought it said save the people.
I'm just trying to go with what you're saying.
Yeah, well, I like to think that they're children because they can't swim, but...
No, they swim. They're swimming, they're just getting kidnapped by other boats.
There you go. Okay, so wait, here's the thing. Just to focus on the racing thing for one more moment. What's funny is like there's so much going on in this particular game at any given moment between you having to worry about the control of your boat and then what's going on with the other boats and the turrets and the quick turns, that like that whole UI that's on the bottom, like I knew it was there, but I wasn't really like looking at it that much or reading into it. And so I guess I just like assumed that it was keeping track of my place, but the thing that I thought was keeping track of my position was, I guess, how fast I'm going. Like that, you have a speedometer.
The speedometer, yeah. That all.
I'm not really sure what use that is in the game, but I guess it's like a neat.
It's very janky. But I mean, that also sort of, I was in the same spot because we sort of had the same experience of our first playthrough where we weren't really paying attention to power ups, and so I saw stuff flashing, but it didn't really matter to me because I was just, again, focused on maneuvering. So yeah, the fire, speed, missile, and force, like they were there, but I wasn't really paying attention to them.
Yeah, it's actually, as far as the speedometer, I until right now I'd never really looked at that, and I just assumed from the way it's moving, I thought it was a compass. Now I'm looking at it, I see that there's numbers and not like north, south, east, west or anything. But I just thought I was looking at it in my peripherals. I thought that was a compass.
Huh.
And it's just funny because, like, what would the compass do for you?
Yeah, who cares? Who cares what direction you're going?
All right, let's move on since we really want to talk about those saving the children. These particular stages, I'm going to lump them together. So there's capture and there's save. So there's capture the mines and save the children. And they are kind of the same idea. In one, you are going into somebody else's little like squared off area and taking their mines from them and bringing them over to your area to blow up. And then the save one is like you have your squared off area and other boats will try to come in and steal your children. And, if they leave the square, if they so much as leave the square, I believe like they are, or the vicinity of the square, they're counted as like gone.
No, they have to get off screen. Yeah.
Oh no, you can go get them, but I feel like, I felt like I saw a number of kids on my screen, but they were still like, maybe I'm making this up in my head, but like I thought I was guarding everybody, and I would always see like gradually like the number count down a little bit.
Maybe
like,
I know that you can go get them back, and like maybe it would add the number back.
Right. It would add the number back, I think. That's what I'm saying, is like if the boats can get the kids far enough away, but you still shoot them down, I feel like it might count them out. Like they do have to be in your square.
No, so I'm just looking at the playthrough right now. It looks like, just from counting it here, it looks like they have to be actually right off the screen before they
take into the
down.
dungeons.
Yeah.
But going to the mine destroyer part of this, like those levels, like this was, I wanted them to develop this more because I really liked the pursuit aspect of like you're being chased, and it's not like you're being chased and they're going to kill you. It's that they want to steal the thing you're dragging, and this is the mode that I think I'd have the most fun in if they just like develop this more. Because I think like while the AI isn't the best, and at certain points the boats chasing you will get stuck on geometry, I found this much more fun than trying to keep all of the children in the square, or trying to jump over waterfalls, or racing inanimate boats. Like this was the most fun I had in the game.
Yeah, it was a good one. I did, it's one of those ones where I was like, wow, this is unexpected. We haven't really seen something like this on the NES. It's such a classic type of competition. It's like almost like a capture the flag thing.
Yeah.
I thought it worked really well. I will say though, I think that I thought a couple more of them I would personally say were tied for me for like what I had the most enjoyment. But yeah, this is up there for sure.
And it's interesting too because the mine component is something that if you even bring it to the destruction place, you can't hang around there either because it will blow up on you and cause you to take damage too. So there's there's a protect it and get it to the zone, but also don't get burned by your own saving. Sean, you were talking about the geometry thing, and I think I know what you mean there. It is kind of upsetting to find out that the AI cannot figure out turning, and so it doesn't matter really what speed. You can have 0 speed or turbo boosts available to you, and as long as you just zigzag your way back to the base where the mines will be blown up, those boats will not catch you without fail. They cannot figure out the zigzag. Like they take the path of most resistance, I suppose, to get to you.
Yeah, and I guess that's why I mean that like it needed more development for it to be like, I guess I could play more if that was a higher percentage of what this game was, and they also thought about it a bit more, like I would be very happy. But I guess it's also the only mode of the game that actually needs to have any kind of artificial intelligence, because everything else is just either pre-programmed patterns, or just sort of they aim at you with turrets. So I get that is probably the most janky application within these mini games. But
they do fix it a little bit in an unintended way. The AI doesn't get any smarter, but it, similar to it's 25 levels, so all of these objectives get repeated in one way or another, but they become a little harder the second and third times around. And I think it might be the third time around. Not only does the landscape kind of have like a central blockade to where you're taking the mines, but there's multiple boats, so you can't just get away with zigzagging through one. You will have to cleverly outplay, or at least pass the second boat, so that it doesn't just so that it doesn't get you as well. Now, granted, once you pass it, obviously then you're in the clear because you can just zigzag through that one too. But it is a way to.
They also do get stuck.
Bit.
They do get stuck on the. That's what I meant by getting stuck on the geometry. Like they will just run into that little island, and not know how to unstick themselves. It's pretty funny to see.
Also, they add like a whirlpool and stuff that's like moving. So you have to like think about, you can't just blindly zigzag anymore. You have to like think about, well, I might have to go straight for a minute and then it might catch up to me. Also, maybe I'm just bad at this, but I still felt like, even though I knew the zigzag thing also, still felt like I was like, it would freak me out when something was coming up right behind me. I was like still like on the edge of my seat, and it still felt like a challenge to me. Maybe I just it's stressful in a good way.
Yeah. High stakes.
The whirlpools is something that you will also find in the, what I'm going to call the obstacle course stages. I'm going to count the waterfall stage in this like obstacle course as well, since technically it's just timing up your ramps and dodging whirlpools as well. These stages, arguably the most difficult in the game. I don't know if you guys would agree with me on that.
I definitely agree.
The difference here all of a sudden becomes that a game that was based around, shooting targets or shooting enemies and racing against time now encourages neither. It's bad to go really fast because you'll be hit by the obstacles, but also you cannot shoot these obstacles down. The logs in your way are not destructible. You have to figure out another way to get around them. And it's not just the logs, of course. Even in later levels, it's like icebergs and stuff like that. But like the idea that you really just have to make sure that you complete this course without taking so much damage that you lose all your lives seems simple and straightforward. But when you couple that with like narrow spaces and lots of obstacles and forgetting that like the power-ups actually provide very little use to you now, I think this is where the game all of a sudden falters.
Oh, for sure. Like if you're sort of getting into a rhythm playing this game between the races and the save the children and the blow up the mines, and they're all pretty engaging. Like this is where it seems like their creativity ran out and are just making it very hard for you to get forward without actually engaging you in any creative way. It's just like, let's make it so that they have to attempt this several times. It's really hard to time it because you're so zoomed in. You can't actually line up with or get a feel for the speed that the ramps are going, and it removes so much of what makes this game interesting. And you have to clear it to get to the stuff that makes the game interesting again.
Right. I totally agree if we're just talking about the jumping the waterfalls levels. I think that those
That's what I'm talking about for the most part.
Yeah, those are just like, that's what, those are the thing I was saying that this game isn't earlier, where it's like difficult, but not like in the intended way. It's difficult, because you can't see the ramps up ahead of you, so you don't know where to go, and because it's just like a little bit of a janky design. So yeah, that I think is the worst. The other obstacle courses with the logs and the icebergs and the stuff you dodge, those are really hard, but I didn't think they felt like unfair or annoying in that way. Like, it felt like you just had to be, that was a level that was all about your precision. And, there are levels that are about your speed and levels that are about your, like a one-on-one little challenge, levels that are boss. And this just felt like a natural thing to include of like, can you thread the needle here? Admittedly, I only played like the first two of those. So like, that would be like level like 5 and level 10 or whatever it was. But like, the one with the logs, and then I think there was one with like, I don't remember what the second one was, but like it wasn't too hard. Icebergs, right? Yeah. But I imagine that later, like maybe they get even harder, and maybe it gets a little more frustratingly unfair. But like those ones I thought were kind of cool, but it's just the waterfall jumping thing that I felt like
that's not what
needed
this game
to kind of go
about.
back to the drawing board.
Well, the waterfall thing ultimately, the biggest setback for it is the amount of space that it gives you between these waterfalls, right? Like, I could understand if there were, maybe like, I don't want to just say longer stretches before each waterfall, because I don't think that necessarily solves the problem. It's the suddenness of the one particular ramp that you need, right? You're only given one way forward.
Yeah.
And couple that with the fact that, like, most of these ramps are moving, you're moving at high speeds, and there are objects that you must avoid. And none of your power-ups, right, can save you. Now, I'm not saying they needed to use the original power-ups here to,
the
like,
game
help
needs
you out.
to zoom out for this to be, like even fun. Like, it's doable.
Absolutely.
It's doable. I guess you could play it enough times that you get the rhythm and, like, the harmonics of all the shit that's moving and just know where you'll have to be at that very moment. But that's not fun. Like, that's just memorization, if that's even how it works.
Yeah, but have you ever tried to, like, slow down, too, like, after you successfully pass a waterfall?
Yeah.
And then you notice, like, the waves actually start, like, pushing you in a particular direction to move up your speed as well. And I can't understand that design choice.
And then, like, you'll try to be more precise and go slower, but that just means you're not going to clear the jump, and you have to do it again anyway.
Yeah. I think that they could have also put, like, some sort of indicator at the top of your screen just to show you where the ramp is. So you could, like, kind of prepare for it.
Yeah, because you would still need to be precise
Exactly.
and, like, get to that point. But at least you know where it is now.
Yeah, it was like those things combined. The fact that it speeds you up after the whirlpool, and the fact that you can't see where you're supposed to go yet. Like, one or the other might have been okay. I mean, personally, I don't think there should ever be a reason you can't see where you're supposed to go before just before you have to go there. But, like, one or the other might have been manageable. But I think with both of those together, it's just kind of broken. Yeah,
and I don't know if this is... I noticed with a few stages, it's not always the same layout each time. Like, even for the very first stage, maybe I'm just having, a lapse in memory here. But I feel like sometimes it, like, changed which direction the stages lead you and such. But in the waterfall stage, no matter what I did, that very first introduction to the waterfall stage, and maybe this is them just trying to communicate to you that you're about to go through hell. When you make it through the first ramp, which is very straightforward, the ramp is there, and it communicates to you that this ramp is going to help you go over this gap, you land exactly in a whirlpool, sorry. You land exactly in a whirlpool if you were going, like, the appropriate speed of just, like, holding down your engine, your revving. So this way you land in that whirlpool. And I just wonder, like, why? Are you trying to also tell me that I'm going to hit into shit in these levels and that, I'm in for a bad time? I don't know if you guys also experienced that or if this was just something localized to me, but I played through that level, the first waterfall level, multiple times. And every time that first whirlpool is just something that you, like, perfectly land into and breaks the momentum, but also makes it harder to get over the following ramp.
Yeah, Mike, I think that may have been just in your personalized copy of this.
Totally could be. What about the other part, though? That the stages aren't always laid out exactly the same.
I think that is just because I know that in the race levels, at least, I think the track splits, and you can go one way or another. But I usually just follow the enemy boats. But I know that there are a couple times where there's, like, a T-junction, and maybe that's where this randomization feels like it's happening. Or maybe it does randomize. I just think I remember tracks splitting.
It's either very impressive technology or I have dementia.
No, well, here's the thing, because the track did split in that one. But also, I wasn't sure if I was imagining it either. I'm more sure of myself now that you're having the same problem, or the same experience. But after I was getting my ass handed to me on the second boss, I went back to, started the whole game over to collect more power-ups, and I think I was going from the start completely in the opposite direction, and I was, like, very confused. I was like, wasn't I going the other way last time? So now I'm thinking that was a thing. I thought I was just misremembering.
All right, so maybe I don't have a diagnosable problem, but instead, Rare has a sixth sense of humor in a game that is based on skill and precision. It's like that you could just never perfect it because it always changes things. So.
Right.
All right, next we have the bonus stages here, the collect the pods and the break the targets, stages that you can't, as far as I know, really, like, die from, although I think eventually the collect the pods stage add, like, bombs, so I guess, like, if you take enough damage, theoretically you could lose a life there. These stages are interesting because they break up the like intensity of the game, maybe for like a much needed moment of just getting your bearings together. But also the collectapods is the best chance to boost your power ups wherever they needed to be boosted most. Any other comments on these particular objectives and stages?
No, I think they're pretty straightforward.
Yeah, they're like they're small pieces that add to the whole. Like they're not. I don't think that there's anything to write home about, but I think it's nice that they're there.
Yeah, I guess like one's like a rail shooter where you're just sort of testing your accuracy because like the boat is moving for you, and one is about your movement, but not really about shooting anything. So they're testing different skills and rewarding you for different skills, but there's nothing crazy going on.
Yeah, and that one that where you're just collecting the power-ups, that's what we were talking about at the beginning, where it's just like a whole level where you have, your goal is to collect these power-ups, but also like your secondary goal is to like when you collect 3 power-ups or 2 power-ups and you get on fire, make sure you boost your firepower, and when you get on, to use those power-ups to like have a plan in mind, and that's when you do your like sort of almost like your character building. It builds character.
It builds character.
Absolutely. All of this is building your character, the Cobra, up for the task of taking down these boss fights, where the game kind of embraces a shmup attitude, similar to the Gradius power-up style system it has. Now it's like putting you against a giant boss monster that you just have to shoot down. There's no obstacles. There's no large course that you must navigate. It's just you and the boss on a body of water, unexplorable.
It's very intimate.
And you must, very intimate. And you must take down the boss before it takes you down. The very first boss is the boss that we've been calling the Loch Ness Monster, and it is the one on the cover. But it's not the only boss in this game. It's not something that you just continue to reoccur there. You continue to fight other bosses like a giant enemy crab, I should have said. And eventually, I think the final boss is supposed to just be Jaws. Like,
there's
just a shark,
there's a giant,
right? Like,
there's the giant Loch Ness Monster, the giant crab, the giant shark, the giant squid, and I think that's it.
I think that's it. The 4 bosses of the game. But keep in mind, the giant squid is not last. It's the giant shark where you just see its.
Sure, I was just listing them as I remembered them. But thank you for that clarification.
But okay, so it's kind of like a shmup, right? But they didn't fully embrace this. They could have done a little more to embrace, like how we're used to dealing with shmup boss fights, right? Like they could have leaned into that a little more. I think, like, yes. The boat maneuvering makes it a little more interesting because, you have to, like, twist and turn more. But the space is so limited that you have that ultimately, like, if you just twist and turn too much with your boat around the boss, right, like navigating your way around it, you're ultimately just going to wind up running into it, too.
I mean, that was my opinion on these. Like, there's not enough room in these levels to really do much of anything. Like, I guess you could, like, you're just trying to move back and forth to avoid attacks, which I guess is any boss in any game. But I think like if you were able to scroll away and like it was just like twice the size of what it was, and like the boss would just like be in the corner of the screen and you can like sort of like do some loops around it, maybe it would be a bit more interesting in that regard. But I think between the controls not really lending themselves well to boss fights of this nature, they had to keep the bosses simple enough so that they could be beaten, but that also means that they're much more forgettable experiences.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that, you have to think about this in a different way than you would a regular shmup also, though. Like, I do think we could definitely use a lot more room on the screen. But other than that, you also have to think about the fact that, like, because of the nature of these controls, you have to orient your boat in the direction you want to go at any time. You can't just quickly dodge to the left. You have to turn to the left like you're actually driving a boat. You can't back up away from something. If a shot is coming at you, you can't just quickly dodge it. You almost have to be like doing circles the whole time, to just constantly be like moving if you want to be able to move away and not run into the sides of the screen, which I think made it a little more frustrating, but also, I think added an appropriate challenge to some extent where it's like, hey, here's a shmup, but you're in a boat. So you have to play it like you're in a boat. So I'm mixed on that. I definitely agree that you should have more room or be able to get away. You should have more space, or maybe everything should just be smaller. This camera should be zoomed out. But I liked the bosses as a refreshing change to shmup bosses. I don't know if I would like any more than 4 of them. Like, it was nice to just kind of get that refreshing thing. I don't think I'd want this to be all games, but it was interesting to like think about it so differently.
Right, and keep in mind, that's a good point, Joe, about the number of bosses, but also just like other NES games that we have played and have not reviewed favorably would have ended after the Loch Ness Monster style boss, right? And then they just loop those same stages.
That's what I thought was going to happen,
again, right? Right. You think like that would have been enough. We're now at a point where good games have to actually have some length to them too, and and add some variety. So it's interesting that like after you complete the boss, one, you haven't even seen all the possible stages, all the different layouts of objectives, but also that like they're going to repeat objectives, but make sure that they change the scenery and make them a little tougher and add extra obstacles and stuff. I applaud that. But to go back to the boss fights, this could have been a chance for them to actually embrace some racing. These could have been boss races against each of these. And before you think I'm joking, just imagine if the Loch Ness Monster thing, right, was almost like bordering an auto scroller here, but it's at the edge of the screen.
That's how
and it's something that's shooting.
That's how I thought you were going to describe this. I think that would be cool. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that a lot. That sounds like a cool like the perfect finale to each of these sections. Like
boss in a race game.
Yeah.
Of course, the game that I am describing and is clearly the like spiritual successor of Cobra Triangle and RC Pro-Am mixed together is Diddy Kong Racing on the Nintendo 64. And if you can't see it yet, all of the different objectives and things that we've been talking about, in one way or another, do happen in Diddy Kong
Save the
Racing.
Children is in there?
Yeah, you have to protect your eggs and capture other people's eggs.
Oh.
So that is like a direct, I posted on the Twitter, at NostalgiaCast Twitter, showing the side-by-side of the Save the Children, which is actually Guard the People. I've seen it in a
it's Save the
playthrough now.
Children.
I think it's Save the Children too. But it's that side-by-side with the eggs, and I think you'll see what I'm talking about with how much of Diddy Kong Racing, which, keep in mind, not only made by Rare, but also was supposed to be RC Pro-Am 64 before they were given permission to use Diddy Kong. So I think
coming together.
like, yeah, all coming together, but also like, there are boat levels in Diddy Kong Racing too. So that's why I say like Cobra Triangle works its way in there. But, it has boss fights. It has obstacles very similar to the obstacles that you see here in their boat races. So I think it's just funny. I wanted to point that out. It's not a sequel or a spinoff, so I didn't put it in that section. But it's worth a thought, right? Of like,
yeah. I think it's a pretty easy through line.
Yeah, sometimes you can't really see it that way though until you go backwards, right? Like I don't think anybody played Diddy Kong Racing and thought like, oh yeah, Cobra Triangle. I think you have to go back, play Diddy Kong Racing, then play Cobra Triangle to see those kinds of connections. It's interesting to do that with games, and I'm surprised we haven't seen that more often with NES games that we've been playing, where we see how they work their way into future games.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way we have. We've been talking about like
that's sort of what we do usually, but I get what you're saying.
Calling out specific games is a cool thing.
Within the same company's work.
Right. for the real sequels and spin-off section, there were no Cobra Triangle sequels, but if you want to play Cobra Triangle and don't have an NES handy, it is in the that rare replay package that recently came out like 2 or 3 years ago that has like 30 of Rare's games on it. Cobra Triangle was included, and I thought that was neat because this is not a game that I hear talked about too much when people talk about the Rare gameography, but it's nice that it's in there. And for Xbox Game Pass people, I'm pretty sure all of the Rare replay games are available in one way or another. So Cobra Triangle is definitely something that can be checked out.
Lovely.
Now, we've been talking and breaking down Cobra Triangle for a while now, and we've broken down literally everything I think the game has to offer. So we might as well give our final verdicts in a little thing we call the Essential Games List. Joe, your vote for Cobra Triangle.
Well, every once in a while, I feel like we get one of these games that I've never heard of that surprises me, and this definitely did that. This definitely impressed me. I thought, just by looking at it, I thought, unfairly, this is just going to be another one of those boring games. It's going to be, it's going to be generic. This really impressed me. I thought it was really cool. I thought it did it did a lot of variety. It has it's polished. We didn't really talk about the graphics, but it's clean and also textured.
Very clean.
Which I feel like it's we usually only get one or the other. Like a lot of texture because they're going for realism, but it looks terrible, or it's very clean but very simple. And this has kind of got the best of both worlds. It controls really well. It gives you some challenge. Now, yeah, there are some hang-ups with a couple of the levels, and I'll say maybe this is a little bit of recency bias. Maybe I'll look back at this and wonder why I did this. But right now, I think that I couldn't say that this isn't essential. I really had a good time with it. So I'm going to go with it.
All right, that is one yes. Sean, your vote.
Yeah, I agree with Joe, and this is it's a unique game. It's like I even mentioned earlier that I don't even know too many modern games that sort of put you in the position that you're in here. I really loved a couple of the different game modes. Some I really hated. And so that sort of puts me in a bind here because a lot of my boxes are ticked here, but I think that some of the less fun moments sort of outweighed the more fun moments for me personally. I still think that this is a game that should be experienced, but I don't know if I can put it on my essential games list, so I'm not going to, but it is it was a tough decision.
Sean says, play it, but not essential. It's a funny thing, right? Where you talk about, Sean, that it has a lot of great things, almost borderline amazing and we haven't seen before, and then it has some bad experience parts that it's all right, this waters down my vote for the game. But if they remove those parts, right? Say they never existed. I know that's hard to imagine, but if they remove all of those parts, does it then go on the essential games list? Is it a better game now that it doesn't have those bad moments, or is it now it actually just doesn't have enough though?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Right. It's an interesting thing, and so I was thinking about that as I was putting together my vote, because the headline for mine was that this is not a complete package. And that was going to be where I left off. But what does it mean to be a complete package? If you just remove all the bad parts, does that it become a great game? Could you do that with any video game? Could any video game be a great game if you just removed all the bad parts? I don't think so.
Well, some games
I think,
wouldn't exist then.
Right, exactly. But also just the idea that, a silly example, the first one that comes to my head is people who didn't like the ending of Mass Effect 3, right? If you make the ending whatever that particular player wanted instead, right? Not removing an ending. I'm not saying the game just doesn't end, but if you give them exactly what they wanted instead, is it now the best game of all time and deserves to be on the essential games list, or is it the ending was really that much, you're only caught up in the ending and therefore like you can't accept the package. So I don't think video games or any medium really needs to be like a 100% thing to be on a best of list. I would say like a lot of games on our essential games list aren't like
they're all flawed.
Actually complete
Yeah.
Right, yeah. They're not complete packages where it's like this is the best, but it is a best of class. You
Sure.
know, it's like this is the best. This is like the best in show that we've seen so far, and that's why these things are up there. All that to be said, I'm still not going to put Cobra Triangle on the essential games list. But that's because
I gotta ask. Can you clarify what you mean by complete package? I'm a little confused.
Right. No. Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is that's the part that's up for interpretation, right? Is what is a complete package? Like if you remove the levels that you don't like, all of a sudden are you saying like, yeah, this is the complete package? Like it only has good moments, and it's like, well, that's not necessarily like how things should work, right? Like just remove the things you don't like, and now it's a game
honestly,
you do
the
like.
way that I'm interpreting what you're saying is like a good thing isn't just an absence of bad things, and really then all you're making is something kind of mediocre that doesn't have any true like terrible parts. But what I also think you mean by the complete package phrase is that even with the good parts in this game and ignoring the annoying or frustrating parts, there isn't enough. Is that sort of what you're saying? Like there isn't enough fun things?
I think I couldn't have said it better for myself. I think you spoke for me there, but correctly so. Like, I guess anything I'm about to say would just reiterate that. So I think we should go with that. Is that ultimately, like, you can't just remove bad things and be happy that like now the game only has the things you like about it. Like there is a reason why there's a waterfall stage in this game, and like the waterfall stage's existence isn't what makes me like say it's not an essential game. I think it's the overall game here is like a fun, unique play it style thing, but not something that I'm gonna see myself like continuing to go back to or saying like, you know, I never beat Cobra Triangle. Like, I should go back and try and beat it. Overall, like, the experience for me was something that I had fun doing, but I didn't love my time with Cobra Triangle. So it wasn't the complete package.
Gotcha.
Does that clear up?
I think it clears it up. I think I just have a different opinion on that. Like, I understand what you're saying now. I just don't agree. But
you
like,
think you're
I agree
wrong.
with. I agree with your thought process. I like this game more. I like the things about this game more. I feel like it is
That's what it
complete
boils
personally,
down
but
to,
now
yeah.
I get why what you're saying.
Right. And I think, that's just an interesting point too, is like there's different qualifications to the essential games list that we've always mentioned, but there's also just like different qualifications for like, what makes a game like go over the threshold of like it and love it. Like I feel like there's a lot of games where if we take the essential games list, for the most part, even though it seems controversial, for the most part on our list, all four of us or now three of us have always voted like typically essential. There's only a few that are like, this person did not vote or it was very divided. For the most part, it's all of us. But if we looked at like our play-its, that's where things get a little more interesting. That's where you see stuff like, Sean recommending Top Gun, which other people agree with you though. You know what I'm saying? It's like once you get into like actual tastes of games, then the list can become like a much more unique thing. I think with the essential games list, because we throw in the like, would you play it today? Like qualifier, right? Of like, it's still essential in 2021. That's like what adds like a little more filter through the mix. So like, yeah, Cobra Triangle, absolutely a play it, and I'll recommend it to every fan of the NES who hopefully is listening to this podcast. But in terms of like essential, I don't think it gets there for me.
Yeah, I hear you. This is actually, yeah, you're right. Like this is definitely like falls into that like that category that I beforehand I would be wondering, will this get on? Will it not? It's not like ones that are obviously going to get on like Mario or Zelda 2.
Right. Which you know, we have. Wait, whoa. Man, sometimes this is just a sketch comedy show.
Right. Sometimes the opening of the episode sounds like the ending.
Guys, be honest with me. When you saw that we were playing a game called Cobra Triangle, you must have thought, at least somewhat, that it was going to be a playoff on the Bermuda Triangle.
Well, all right, that's actually not what I was thinking. I still don't know what Cobra Triangle is really referencing here. I figured with Cobra in the name, I thought it was going to be like some kind of military thing because, you know, snakes show up as in titles in those kinds of games sometime. But I have no idea what this means.
My original thought was similar, like maybe just because like Cobra Command type thing or something. But once I saw there was water, I did think Bermuda Triangle.
Once I saw that there was water.
Yeah, but that had nothing to do with the Cobra Triangle. Whenever I see water, I think about the Bermuda Triangle.
Now I think that the triangle part is just because, like, you know, boats are slightly triangular.
Yeah, and the Cobra part is because there's a cobra in the wake. When you look back behind a speedboat, it looks like a cobra head.
Oh, that's fun.
Is it not that, like, are Cobra like a type of boats? Like, is that a possibility?
I suppose.
No.
I don't know
That's
enough
what I
about
said.
boats.
I don't know enough about boats. I'm not rich enough to own one.
I don't know.
Joe's pretty
No
confident
idea.
about that,
I have
though.
no idea.
Oh.
Yeah, it's something about that. Just, you know, maybe I just thought, like, even if maybe your boat is the Cobra in this game, like, for all we know, it's just nicknamed the Cobra, and the triangle part is like just a you know, it's a shape, just a fun shape reference.
What's your favorite shape?
It's just a reference to shapes, like, you know,
Hexagon.
sick reference. Yeah.
Why does it feel like we're done with the episode?
No, we're not done with the episode.
Feels like this is the post-show.
I think what I was really wanted this to be about was just about the Bermuda Triangle, because that is something that, like, as a kid, you're told to be, like, actively afraid of. Like, we need to solve whatever's going down at the Bermuda Triangle. But then, like, when you become an adult, you just don't think about that anymore.
I mean, it's the same with whirlpools, and that's in this game, too. Like, I was deathly afraid of whirlpools.
Whirlpools and quicksand.
Yeah, exactly.
They're
That's true.
everywhere, but also nowhere.
But, like, I mean, has anyone seen a whirlpool before?
Has anyone seen a whirlpool and quicksand in the same room at the same time?